Virginia Giuffre helped vanquish a prince and a millionaire.
And I won't stop fighting. I will never be silenced.
But one of her toughest battles was a very private one.
It was the worst thing that could have happened to her. Her children were her life.
Virginia, a podcast from the newsrooms of The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald and WA Today. Coming soon.
Starting a business is one thing, running it successfully is another. But doing it with your spouse and 4 kids is a different kettle of fish altogether. Janine Allis has done all of the above after founding Boost Juice as a single store in the 2000s and growing it into a global empire. She's since become one of the most sought-after entrepreneurs in the country, but some of the lessons she learned about business and leadership happened, wait for it, on David Bowie's boat, after she lied about her experience to get a job as a stewardess. Since founding Boost, Alice has become a regular on our small screens as a judge on Shark Tank, as well as appearing on Australian Survivor twice. She also owns one of Australia's fastest growing dessert chains, Yochi. I'm Conrad Marshall, and from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, welcome to Good Weekend Talks, featuring weekly in-depth conversations with fascinating people. In this chat, Alice shares the challenges and delights of building a business with her husband, how she finds time to surf, why she's merely an active spectator in Yochi, which is run by her son Oliver, and what she looks for in a startup. Today's episode is hosted by business reporter Jessica Yun.
Janine, thanks so much for joining me for Good Weekend Talks.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you're, of course, best known for being the founder of Boost Juice and quite a prolific entrepreneur. And, of course, you picked up the Yochi chain a couple of years back, which is very, very popular. I don't need to introduce that to people, I think. And these days you run a mentorship program, the Business Academy, which you co-founded, where you share insights that I'm sure you didn't learn in a classroom, which I'm about to ask you about. But I'd love to hear about some of those first odd jobs that you had, well before Boost was even a thought. I know that you bounced around a lot of different things. Your first job was picking strawberries at 14. You were a gym instructor, a nanny in France. You got a job as a stewardess on David Bowie's boat. There's not a whole lot in common between those jobs and all in between. What was it? Was there something that you were searching for?
No, God, you're young. You're not searching. You're just going, as an opportunity, I'll do that. Particularly when you're traveling overseas. Overseas, it's not actually about searching. It's actually about living and eating. I certainly didn't have an experience for a stewardess on the boat. Back then, there wasn't even any Wi-Fi, so no one could work out whether there was a yachting industry in Melbourne or there wasn't a yachting industry in Melbourne. So, so for me, I went, yes, have you got experience on yachts? Sure. I'm from Melbourne, of course. And then, so I got a job, and then Bowie bought it 6 weeks later. And you know what? I think that's the whole thing. It doesn't matter what your experience is. You can learn. You can kind of learn. And, back then you didn't really, I remember the skipper saying to me, all right, if we sink, you just die. Right? There wasn't
reassuring.
There wasn't any, and there was life rafts, but he never even showed us how to use them. It's like, nah, it just won't be pretty. And I went, okay, thanks for letting me know that. Like, there wasn't any people come on board and we give them safety instructions. It was just like, I love the 90s, early 90s.
Were there certain, like, when you look back on some of those earlier jobs, how would you say that those earlier experiences, I guess, set you up for what eventually became Boost and then, a career in entrepreneurship?
I think one of the key things of traveling, particularly young and dumb, is that you have to learn solutions. I got myself into all sorts of problems, right? And there wasn't an option. You had to work it out. And there was no one to save you. There was no manual. There was no YouTube to kind of go, how do I get out of this one? You've just got to work it out yourself. And so I think that took into business, a level of failure is not an option. I've got to find a way and I'll stick to it until I find a solution. And I do think that travel, particularly when sometimes you're in peril, it's not like you're going to lose some money this week because you lose your life in some circumstances. You've just got to work it out. And I think the key one with working for Bowie is, I don't know about you, but growing up, I always was told that there was two types of people. There was us, normal mere mortals, and then there was super people. Super people were like the Queen and, David Bowie and, rock stars, Marilyn Monroe. They're all super people. And I think one of the things that taught me working for Bowie is people are just simply people. And that was, so I don't get intimidated by anybody. Right. There is no, like on the boats, I did meet royalty. I did meet rock stars, movie stars, and they were just people. Right. And so when I sort of came into business and started to grow a business, I never thought I was more than nor less than anyone else. And so I think that was a really good lesson because working on the boats, you come across some of the richest people in the world, and some of them just were like, oh, I'm a millionaire. I'm on a boat. I need to act like this. I need to be an asshole to the staff because that's what rich people do, right? And then there was other people who was just so comfortable in their own skin, probably had 10 times more money than the guy that was the idiot, who just went, you know what, we're just people, and I happen to have more money than you, but let's play Scrabble. So it was a really nice lesson for me going into the world of business and the world of, in some respects, leadership, to know that everyone has a part to play. I've done a lot of TV, and a lot of people on TV, not a lot, but some people on TV definitely do I'm very special and to be treated very special. And for me, I always went, I'm a piece of a cog. I might be the headline act, but I am a piece of the cog. I'm no special than the cameraman because without the cameraman, you can't go to air. I'm no more special than the person who does the writing or the camera work or the makeup or so no one is more special than anyone. It's actually, you all play a part in achieving a goal.
Yeah, it's so interesting how those earlier travel experiences and that exposure, I think, to lots of different environments and circumstances and to different kinds of people gives you that perspective about where you fit and who you are. And at the end of the day, I think it's just the relationships that sort of make it or break it, which I want to keep asking you about. But you set up Boost in 2000 in Adelaide, and the idea for that came when you were traveling in the US and you saw that smoothie trend taking off, and we didn't have anything quite like that here. You were 32 years old at the time, on maternity leave with your expecting your third child, or you just had your third child. What possessed you at that time to be like, right, like I'm going to start a smoothie chain? What made you think that your idea for Boost was something worth backing and going into?
Look, you got to remember, I had no concept of business. I had no concept of anything. So a bit like me on a boat in the south of France. I'd never been a stewardess. I'd never been a business person. But who's to say you can't work it out? So for me, I was like, there was nothing. 25 years ago, there was nothing that was healthy out there. You take your kids out and you got maybe pie and chips was the healthiest you could find. And so for me, it was like, gee, how do I get more fruit and vegetables in people's diet? And how do I create a product that I would like to have? And how can I create a concept that I think would be pretty cool to go to? So it was basically all about me. As a consumer, what I wanted as a consumer. And then, the category had existed or was existing in America at the time. It was pretty much sort of similar to that, but I didn't like their concept. So it was basically what I would have liked to go to as a customer, and how I want to be treated as a customer, and how I wanted to treat my staff. So it was very much all about how I thought it should be, which in actual fact, without any preconceived ideas, because I hadn't run a business before, because I hadn't been trained, I just went, this is how I think it should be.
And clearly has been very, very successful. I believe it's more than 700 stores across 15 countries now, Boost, is that right?
I think we're up to 1,000.
1,000, more than 1,000 stores across 15 countries. So still going very, very strong. I'd love to know what were some of those curveballs over that journey that, you ran into when you were trying to get Boost off the ground. You said that you were coming in, you'd never sort of started or run a business before. Were there moments where you were like, it's all over?
Oh, yeah. Or there's always times when there's business you go, I don't know how I'm going to work this one out. I think it was, look, the curveballs, there's curveballs every day. Like there was, from people leaving to people stealing, for being sued for, God, how long have you got? Probably one of the hardest ones was about 4 years in, and we got smashed by some bad PR. It was about, they talked about there was, cups on Bondi Beach, and that was our fault. And then there was some competitors that were saying health claims, which you're not allowed to, not that we ever did, but because we were the largest juice bar, they went, every juice bar is doing this. So there was a few things that kind of hit us where our sales went down for a year or so, and you had to then go, right, okay, how do we look at this? How do we grow? How do we attack ourselves? And, the first thing everyone does when things go south, and, people will be watching this and be doing that, is you blame other things. You blame the environment, you blame the government, you blame petrol prices, you blame a war in Russia.
Which are all of these can be valid factors that go into how a business runs and affects a business.
Yeah. If you've got import and you've got your price going up by 20% for travel, of course you can. But the thing is, though, if that is the only thing you blame, then what tends to happen is you just sit back and put your hands up and go, it's not my fault. And so what we found was, though, when we picked up a mirror and looked in the mirror, it was, we'd grown really fast. Like we'd got to 100 stores in 4 years. The staff, we hadn't had enough staff in there. It was just too quick. And so we stopped, pulled back, re-looked at our store, re-looked at our train, re-looked at everything, and then reset. And, I don't think we've had a major negative year since, and that was, 21 years ago. So I think those times when when things get hard, they're the learning opportunities. No one learns anything from success. No one. It's actually only when you fail that you learn. Because success, in actual fact, success teaches you to be arrogant and think that you've got all the answers. Getting it wrong is humbling, and actually, the more you get it wrong, the more you learn, and the more money you lose, and the more it hurts, and the more you learn.
Do you find that in terms of, and this is jumping ahead a bit because, of course, I want to talk about the Business Academy and the advice that you share there, and also on your, your Instagram, you're very free with your advice and very, very candid. But do you think that how much of that is a roadblock to entrepreneurs and their success when they're not willing to look in the mirror? Do you find that is something that, entrepreneurs maybe get it? They let it get to their head that they've been really successful, and so when things do go wrong, they're not willing to tackle some of the problems that are there.
There's definitely a bell curve when you meet people. The people start off and they go, "Oh my God, my business is worth $5 million," and you go, "Are you making money yet?" No, but it's the idea, it's the brand that's worth it, right? You go, okay, and then things get hard. And then they run out of money, and then they're humbled, right? So I think that, and it's good to be humbled. It's good to be not arrogant. It's good to be scared in business, because then you prepare for it in advance. You always should be thinking about that truck that's coming towards you and which airbags you're going to deploy, because there will be a truck and you will get hit and you will need to sort it.
So it's a lot of the Boost journey was then about learning to almost anticipate the problems before they come, or just to factor that into all the decisions that you make, and to be a little bit more sort of aware about things are going to go wrong.
Oh yeah, look, you should do that in life. I'm always perplexed when people live beyond their means, and I think, well, at some point you're going to run out of money, right? Or so you sort of. I've always been to think ahead. I always do cash flows. I always do budgets. I always plan effectively, because you always chase money. We always ask for money from a bank when you've got money in the bank, not when you've completely run out.
Yes.
It's just planning. You're thinking ahead. People underestimate planning.
I know that you built Boost with your husband, Jeff, who was the head of programming at Radio Network Australia for many years before he joined you at Boost. And that later grew into House of Chains under Retail Zoo, which includes Betty's Burgers. And along the way, you raised 4 kids. And I know that, I mean, obviously Boost started when you had your third along the way. And so when Yochi came along in 2020, I know your son Oliver joined as brand director, and there are other family members who are playing a part as well. But coming back to Boost, I find husband and wife business partnerships so fascinating and impressive, because it seems to me such a high stakes and tricky dynamic to navigate, and things can really go wrong. In those early days, what was it like working with your husband, or working out who does what role, or how did that go down?
Sometimes not very well at all, right? But look, the thing is, where we got to is that the thing with my husband and I, we are very different. Like I would say he's one of the most incredible marketing minds in Australia, if not the world, right? The way he thinks, the way he strategizes, it's quite extraordinary. And but I can build it, right? So I know how to put a structure together. I know how to do contracts. I know how to, I know enough of everything to be dangerous. So, so I think we laugh with Boost, saying that if it was up to him, he would have a lot of, hundreds of business early, and they would have collapsed. And with me, I would have had 5 beautifully run stores. So I think as a combination, we were very good, very powerful. And that's when you can get partnerships right. If you can get 1 and 1 equals 10, that's when gold happens. And, fortunate enough that where we got to is we stayed in our own lanes. I had my area I looked after. He had his area he looked after. And yes, we'd ask advice from each other for the different areas. However, we were very respectful of, you've got that. And if you stuff it up, that's okay. But that's you're accountable for that area, and I'm accountable for this area.
Did that ever sort of bleed into your marriage and your relationship and in the family, when things were obviously, a problem needed to be sorted out in the business? How does that impact the personal side?
You've got to have rules. Like, I would be a shocker. I would, just before he's about to fall asleep, I'd go, now, have you thought about that problem? And he would go, are you kidding me? Like,
not now, not right now.
Are you kidding me? I'm about to go to sleep. So we kind of did that. And also we knew when the other one went, I'm done. I'm like, let's park it for tomorrow. Mm. We were very good like that. And look, we've been married 30 years now. So, and we've got better. There was times where I could have, if I had a knife, I could have thrown it at him at the other side of the table, and vice versa, I'm sure. But I had a very strict rule that we never, ever debated. We never had an argument in front of people, ever.
And did that include your kids as well?
Oh, occasionally. But no, at work, because I thought nothing is worse than having a husband and wife having a bitter argument in front of staff. I thought I would never do that. So I would park it and then deal with it in private. Mm. And I think that was a very good rule.
No, it's so interesting how those delineations and just being really respectful of knowing what your lane is and what the other person's lane is. I've heard you speak before about in terms of leadership and having the right team and not being able to basically get very far if you don't have the right team with you.
Yeah, completely. No. It's, as I said earlier, with regard to the TV analogy, without every single element, without staff, without the person, the junior 16-year-old has got her first job, right? Without them, we haven't got a business. And and also we're very conscious of not letting the tail wag the dog. In other words, it's all about the stores. It's not about support centre. It's not about head office. It's all about the stores. And so that was something that we really drilled into the business.
I know you've talked before about making it work when you're trying to run a business and a household as well. I'm just trying to fathom running a business with just one kid, let alone, a whole family. And so what were some of the sacrifices along the way that, you were juggling so much? How did you prioritize your time, or what were some of the sacrifices that, people don't see, but you had to make?
Oh, look, the reality is I loved the mental stimulation of work, loved it. Probably the sacrifice is always yourself. It's always, your social life. It's always your fitness. It's always your health, right? That's what tends to, because you give to your kids, you give to your husband, give to everyone, the business, and the last person you give to is you. But, at 40, I had a big, right, things have to change. I can't continue like this. And I took up surfing, took up tennis, took up horse riding, and just went, right, things are going to change. And, so since then I've had a bit more stronger discipline with regard to not being all about. But to be honest, in fairness, Jess, if you're not prepared to give everything to create something extraordinary, and that's like an athlete. Like you talk to athletes, right? They go, oh, we can't go out because we've got a trial. You talk to actors. Oh, sorry, I've got a live gig on tonight. I can't do it. You talk to anyone who wants to be anything of note, and you might want to go party with your friends, but no, because you want to make sure you hit that trial so you can make the Olympics. So I think that people who really want to achieve at that high level know that you can't do it without sacrifice.
Extending, what we were talking about, the family dynamics or the relationship dynamics in, having a business where you do have family involved. I guess I would love to know, I know Ollie is essentially running or plays a really, really big role at Yochi as brand director, but just more broadly, with the kids, do you feel like are they involved in your businesses? Or the other three, do you feel like, did they grow up sort of hearing these conversations at home at the dinner table? Did they develop a taste for that because it was sort of the environment they grew up in?
Yeah, look, you don't know, don't you? You only know what your own life. So my son Samuel has a roastery in the Northern Rivers and is doing really well. It's
a coffee roastery.
Yeah. Riley, my other son, is a YouTuber and he's got a supplement brand, which is doing very well. Yeah, so they're all sort of leaning to it. Talia's just finished HSC. We're interested to see what she does. Oliver's, a really, a real main player in Yochi. So they've all got their own paths that they're doing. And, I've never been one, you have to do uni or you don't have to do uni. I've always been, take whatever path you want to take. One of the things that we forget is that the life is relatively long. Like, just because you don't do uni straight after school doesn't mean you can't go back to it if you want to. So for me, it's just lean into the personality of the child and encourage whatever passion they have.
Yeah, let life teach you, and that's, going back to your experiences traveling and stuff when you were younger. Yeah. Look, as a reporter, I'm supposed to be very impartial when I report on businesses, but I'll tell anybody who will listen that Yochi is one of my favorite brands as a consumer and as a reporter. But when you bought Yochi off George Calombaris in 2020, it was only 4 stores at the time. It's a very, totally different and much better business today. When you bought it, again, what did you see in that made you go, this is like an opportunity here? What did you have a vision back then of what it might become?
Look, at the end of the day, it was very much an Oliver and his dad's sort of business vision. I'm sort of in background as a cheerleader. They're pretty much doing it. Really happy that my sister-in-law and brother-in-law got involved with regard to South Australia and WA, and Claudia, who is their daughter, is my niece, who the talent of that girl with regard to, I don't know if you see the designs of the store, well, you do, the designs of the stores, and her ability to, being a young girl and pivot to create what you see, which is Yochi today, is actually quite extraordinary. So I'm the first one to go, be very careful to do business with friends and family, but in the case of, Yochi, it's been a really successful story. And Oliver and Claudia particularly have just done, and both of them, what are they, late 20s, understand the market, understand the look, understand it. I think the thing with Oliver, his moral compass is really the beating heart of Yochi. He went to Brazil to check out the acai to make sure it came from the right village and there was no, and people were treated well. And he was so inspired that a portion of some of the sales goes to that village. He has definitely pushed the fact that we don't have plastic in the store and we have free water. His values ensure that all of our packaging is as environmental as possible, and he pushes that hard. So where, I might look at a P&L, he looks at the moral stance. So, and what's happened there is because of that, and because of, the Claudia and Olivers of the world, that, God, it is this great cultured business of getting it right. And Brooke, who's the CEO of the business, he's someone that I actually worked with years ago at Retail Zoo. And once again, her ability with people and culture means that it's a very, very special business. So no, as I said, I'm a very active spectator, but no, really proud of what, Oliver and Claudia and the team have done, and Brooke.
No, it's so interesting. I'm such a Yochi fan. I'm either there or I'm talking about it or making plans to go there. But it's so interesting when I talk to other people and not a lot of people necessarily know. You have some people who do know that Yochi was a brand that you acquired. But some people, don't know that connection there. But I find it really, really fascinating how just looking at the way that Yochi kind of really lives out its ideals and the ethical and the moral aspect that you were talking about. Was that something that that you think Ollie kind of got from you in that sort of household and in that environment where business and entrepreneurship was sort of part of the day-to-day, or does that come from him and the generation, of being much more ethically and sustainably focused?
I think a bit of both. Yeah, he is definitely built in a way that goes, I want to do good in this world. I want to leave this world better than I came here. And that's not an era. That's him. I mean, I've got another son who is a complete capitalist and goes environmental what, right? So, and they're only 18 months apart. So, no, Oliver is definitely one that goes, I want to make a difference, and I will make a difference. And, as parents, it's our job to support that. And that's why people go, I love Yochi. I don't know why. Because the food's great, but it really is the energy of that place of Yochi, and the ethics behind it is second to none.
Absolutely. I think, look, I could spend a lot more time talking about Yochi, but of course, Yochi is just one among many businesses that you've invested in over the years. You were a judge on Shark Tank in the first 4 seasons, and in 2019, you competed in season 6 of Australian Survivor, earned the nickname The Godmother, came 6th. Then last year, you went back and placed 3rd. You've also appeared in Celebrity Apprentice and Food Stars. Just very quickly, what did reality TV teach you, that you then went back and put into business?
Reality TV doesn't teach you anything.
Not in Survivor when I know that there was a lot of, strategy and.
But look, I find TV fun. It's just like I get to play a part. It's just, it's good fun. Survivor was a bit different. Survivor was quite extraordinary. It was probably one of the best times I've had and the worst time I've ever had. You are genuinely, I mean, you see, 90 minutes or 60 minutes a night, and out of that 60 minutes, there's probably 48 hours worth of existing. And so, so you are, you really do go primal. You really do bond with people like you've never bonded with people before, and in a positive and a negative way. And so, and then you do want to see what you're made of. I was, I think, 54 this first time I went into it. I think 58 the second, or 59 or whatever. And so you do want to go, okay, have I still got it? Can I compete? I've always been into sport. I've always been fairly active. So, you do want to be able to go, okay, how can I do this one? And, I did physically was was very good, won some challenges, won individual immunity. So, a lot of, so no, it ticks a lot of boxes. But, God, who doesn't want to hang out with Ross Clark Jones for a few days on the beach with that madman and cuddle up to Pierre Miranda? Who doesn't want to cuddle up to Pierre Miranda?
Oh dear, I'm not sure I'd be able to make it on a show like Survivor, but no, I think you're tougher than some of the rest of us. But I know that these days you are channeling a lot of the insights and the experience over decades and putting it into the Business Academy. And I wanted to ask, do you think it's harder today to start a business than it was? Like if you tried to set up a Boost today, would that be easier or harder than it was in the 2000s?
In some respects, significantly easier because the amount of, with Claude and the capabilities of Claude and AI generally, to be able to do some of the forms that would have taken me hours and weeks and systems and processes and data analysis and all of those, which now takes minutes. And not only take minutes, takes an enormous amount of staff. To be able to have it at your fingertips, that would have been significantly easier in the back end. At the front end, any business opening at any time has its challenges. I don't think any era is easier than another era. I think they all have their challenges. I think back then we literally opened Boost juice bars the same year that GST was implemented. And during that time there's been, COVID, there's been, GFC, there's been wars, there's been all sorts of things in the last 25 years. But there's always going to be things like that. There always is. And as a business, you've just got to keep taking yourself. Structurally, so much easier. I mean, I was literally, if I needed to find someone, I was picking up Yellow Pages. Like, that's how, I don't
even remember the last time I saw Yellow Pages.
Oh my God. And then even internet had started, but it was like so slow and there was nothing on it. Like the World Wide Web had about 4 pages of nothing on it. So yeah, so no, we've come a long way in the last 25 years.
As an investor, how many businesses do you think you've invested in over the years? I think what I'm really curious about is knowing, is there something that you look for when you get all these pitches or you look at these businesses? You're making sort of rapid fire decisions about whether or not this is something that you're interested in looking at, or if it's like, no, there's nothing here. What do you look for? What sort of sorts out, something that's got legs and something that's like, this is a dud?
The first thing you look for is actual proof that the customer wants it. Because so if I don't invest in startups where the customer hasn't been tested because it's just, it's just too hard. But I will, but if it's a product that is, that I think the consumer would like, it's on trend and look at the competitive platform, then I'll look at it. But the key thing is, even if it's the greatest business on the planet, it's about the person, is the person got the fire in their belly to be able to push through when it gets hard? Because as we've said through this interview, it's not easy. Things happen out of your control, in your control. And, you've got to have that grunt determination to push through when others give up.
No, I think that's so interesting. I think it takes building something of your own from scratch and knowing what that journey looks like and having to pick yourself up and come back when things go wrong, which is clearly quite often, to know whether or not this is a person that you can back to lead a successful business. Do you find that people tend to run into a lot of the same mistakes and trip up on the same hurdles when, they're asking you for business advice?
Yeah, often. The number one thing is people don't understand their business. They don't manage their cash flow. And there's a business, if you've got a business that's got stock and you've got to keep reordering, they waste money and they don't put that money aside for that next reorder. So cash flow is a big one. So managing their finances and understanding their finances is a big one. Spending too much too early. Going, okay, I'm now a business owner. So, and a lot of waste of money instead of being really thoughtful, focusing on efficiencies. Like, as I said, we're in the world of AI. AI has it's going to have its challenges going forward, but for people starting their own business, it's a godsend. So, people just not leaning into technology. Is it can help them enormously.
Final question for you. Are you working on something that we haven't heard about yet? What have you got up your sleeve?
Look, there's always something bubbling, right? There's always something bubbling, and there's always sort of something that you're trying to search. I've my body mind is very much been sorted well. So yeah, sort of looking into sort of the, trying to find that sort of consciousness, spiritual type side as this place that I'm sort of looking at the moment. And whether that ends up in a retreat or whether that ends up in a book, whether that ends up in what, I don't know. But it's just something I'm investigating at the moment.
That sounds so interesting. Well, I very much hope you keep me posted on that when you're ready to announce something. But Janine, it's been fantastic chatting with you and learning more about the journey and the business and what it takes, I think, to really run a good business. It's funny, I obviously report on it all the time, but have no idea what actually running one looks like. So I can only ask you and learn and share that. But thank you so much for joining us on Good Weekend Talks.
My pleasure, Jess, and enjoy your next Yochi.
Thank you so much. I definitely will. Thank you.
To enjoy more in-depth journalism from the latest edition of Good Weekend, visit us at theage.com.au or smh.com.au. This episode was produced by Conrad Marshall and edited by Tim Mumry, with technical assistance from Chi Wong. Our executive producer is Tammy Mills. Tom McKendrick and Lisa Muxworthy oversee our podcasts, and Melissa Stevens is the editor of Good Weekend. If you enjoyed this episode, follow our podcast and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. And thanks for listening.